Coming up the path, one of my favourite plants, Watsonia from South Africa. Comes out of a corm. This is a tallish pink coloured. They're white through to orange. And a lot of them have been bred from a swarm that occurred on Tresco in the Isles of Scilly. It's time for a "Where did that name come from?" segment of my video, and I'm looking at the Watsonia and found out a little bit about it. William Watson was a physician and botanist. They often went together in the 18th century. Born 1715, died in 1787. He was a Fellow of the Royal Society and became its Vice President for the last 10 years of his life. In Sweden, Carl Linnaeus, the great botanist, was busy reclassifying the whole of living organisms. A bit of a task, I hear you say. It certainly was. And he developed this new system of families, genus, species, which we still use to this day. And in the 1750s, he came over to England and visited Philip Miller, who was curator of the Chelsea Physic Garden at the time, and couldn't actually convince Miller that this was a good system to follow, rather than the old-fashioned describing every plant system. But anyway, Miller did eventually come round. But the great proponent of Linnaeus was, in fact, William Watson. But in addition to botany and medicine, William Watson also was, by chance, very keen on the new-fangled science of electricity. And in fact, he devised a series of experiments which showed that electricity travelled incredibly, almost instantaneously, along long distances. And one theory was that it was like water, a fluid, but he said it was more like an ether, he called it, and published papers, proceedings from the Royal Society, lectures he gave on the experiments he did. And quite separately, the great American Benjamin Franklin also came to the same conclusions about electricity, and the two men corresponded for many years. So Philip Miller in 1759 decided this genus could all be lumped together and chose the name Watsonia in honour of his friend William Watson. One thing I do find intriguing about Watsonias is the fact that they have these blue anthers, which makes it quite distinctive. So you can tell the Watsonia quite easily from that characteristic. And next to them, behind, is another South African called Tulbagia violacea. This is a beautiful chives relative, and it has a lovely scent, but it's gone on flowering for months. Very well worthwhile. It's obviously enjoying this west-facing, sunny, well-drained bank, and the two make quite a nice combination. Amongst the little group of my Chinese babies, as I call them, is this rather jolly Hypericum, which I think is Hypericum forestii. But my goodness, the bumblebees just go mad over them, over the flowers. They seem to behave in a rather crazy fashion, doing wild dances. Maybe it's got some sort of drug-like quality to them. Now here's another of my Chinese babies, and this one I collected in Sichuan ages ago, and this is a form which has very, very long petioles, as they call them, the stalk that joins the leaf to the stem, and very bold foliage. So it's a dramatic plant. Coming down from the house, see a fine specimen of the New Zealand broom. It used to be called Cordospartium stevensoni, but it's now lumped in with all the other New Zealand brooms under the name Carmichaelia. But it makes a splendid show, sort of fountain of rather strange higgledy-piggledy flowers in a pale mauve colour. This comes from the South Island of New Zealand, where it is rather endangered. Doesn't seem to set seed much. Actually, in the South Island, where it's found near Kaikoura, it grows really in a more sheltered, sunny, well-drained position, and can get up to 30 feet tall in the wild. There's a big tree, but not here. And here we come across another group of Watsonias. These ones are a good deep orange. I think these are definitely Tresco hybrids. This is showing again the characteristic blue anthers. Well, there is a story associated with this clump of Watsonias, which I'm rather embarrassed to tell you, but I will anyway. Many years ago, I used to visit an elderly gentleman in a village not far from here on a regular basis, and during the summer I used to look over the fence at his neighbour's garden, where there was a clump of Watsonias, orange ones, which I greatly admired. Thought nothing more of it, but a couple of years later, as luck would have it, luck for me that is, not for the unfortunate neighbour, because she fell over and called the doctor. I was on duty. I went over, diagnosed a broken hip, and she was quite comfortable lying on the floor. We called the ambulance. So while she was down there and the sun was hovering around, I broached the subject of this group of Watsonias, saying how much I'd admired it and could I possibly have a bit of the clump. She certainly agreed to that from the floor, and dispatched her son to go and find some suitable tool. Unfortunately, although there was a garden shed, I think inside the garden shed were probably a couple of broken chairs and a broken old fork. Never mind, the son came back with this broken fork, and I attacked the clump and managed to get a piece of this Watsonia. The ambulance duly arrived, and off the lady went, and off I went with this prize. And here it is, about 20 years later. The public confession of a heartless doctor. Just along from the Watsonia and some lovely gladioli is another New Zealand broom, dwarf one with purpley scented pea-like flowers, called Carmichaelia Odorata. The leaves come in two stages. There's the little leaves which are new and they drop off, and you're left with these rather strap-like leaves. Coming up the steps, there's a massive tree of the Chinese lime called Tilia tuan, and next to it is the flowering small Chinese tree called Maackia chinensis, with its erect white flowers. We'll have a closer look at both those. Now, looking at this lime closely, it has quite long tapering leaves, this one, Tilia tuan, and I'll show you that it also has rather silver undersides. So there we have it, quite silver underneath these long tapering leaves, and really when the sun shines on the leaf it makes the silver stand up much more. Taking a look at this, closer look at this small tree. This is Maackia chinensis, which comes from Sichuan in southwest China. Now it's got a relative which comes from North China and Russia called Maackia amirensis, but this one is finer, I think, more elegant, finer leaf as well. Let's follow this beautiful smooth piebald trunk, see where it leads. And it leads to a small now tree which is flowering away with its bunches of really highly scented flowers. This one is called Clethra barbinervis. Let's come round the front of it. Now this reveals the extent of the flowering, which is profuse really, I would say. And again, highly scented, so you just get arrested in your tracks when you pass by. And the bees seem to be enjoying it as much as we do. Now, coming round from the Clethra, see there's a rather weird weeping tree, which is called Sophora japonica pendula, and it's refusing to get any taller than that. The trunk is just bending over at that height, and that's it. And the main reason for coming around here is also to have a look at this hornbeam from China with its amazing, intricately woven catkins. This is Carpinus fangiana, and let's have a look at the catkin up close and personal, because they are the most extraordinarily intricate design. A work of art, really. Sort of pleats and folds. Intricate. I do love this clump, which says exotic to me, of the large Californian poppies in amongst the hardy-ish Chinese banana Musa Basjo. Let's wander through the poppy jungle.